And we are live on location in Orlando, Florida at the 18th 21 Convention. It is good to have you guys with us today. To those watching at home, and of course our live studio audience, thank you guys for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate your support. You guys are what makes this event happen. We've got panelists and speakers, but you guys are the real core of the 21 Convention. This is the 84th edition of the Red Man Group Live, and today we're going to discuss the effect that the 2020 presidential campaign and subsequent election will have on the manosphere as well as the red pill and vice versa. How can we affect the election? Do we affect the election and the campaign? Then, of course, we'll talk about the 21 Convention as well as the 22 Convention, which is for women and by men. That's going to be coming up here real soon. Before we get started, let me introduce today's esteemed panel. From my left, your right, to my right, your left. We've got Texas Dom of TexasDom.com. Next is Ken Curry. And Ken, remind me of what your website is. Solidman.com. Excellent. Next is Steve the Dean Williams. You guys can check his website out at themanmindset.com. To my left, a man I met about a minute and a half ago, Stefan Arnio. His website is stefanarnio.com. He's written a few books here: Hard Ties, Create Strong Men, Self-Made Millionaire, How to Make Men. He talks money, sex, religion, and politics. My kind of cocktail there. To my right here, of course, is Goldman Unleash of GoldmanUnleash.com. Of course, my man Socrates of ManningUpSmart.com. And Rich Granite, a retired Navy SEAL who wrote a book called Building Confidence Through Violence. Sure to trigger a lot of different people, namely women. So this is who we are. We're going to start off asking our panelists about the 21 Convention, what their experiences are. And I'd like to start with you, Rich. As a retired Navy SEAL, understanding what the military has more or less devolved into in terms of the culture, the things it allows, the things that it does not allow, all of the shenanigans that goes on in the military. What are your thoughts on how the 21 Convention could help men in the military, particularly young men?
Well, I think in two different aspects. If we look at the next generation of men coming up who will be joining into the military, I think it'll be huge for them to get their confidence back, to understand it's okay to be a man, and to have that warrior spirit and that warrior mentality going into the military. I think one of the big things going into the election too, though, from a political standpoint, if you look at the ages of 18 to 35. They've done different surveys and polls, and they show that 45 to 55% of that demographic age and greater support socialism or that type of government. Which obviously, if you're joining the military to fight and defend the Constitution of the United States, it's kind of it doesn't really work. So you can't really be defending freedom and liberty and the Constitution while supporting a socialist style of government. So I think on two phases, the one being the political aspect of it, but also making sure that we understand that men should be men, and the next generation that we're raising up that's under 18, allowing them to explore that aspect of their lives and their childhood and develop those skills and that self-confidence needed to be war-fighting men.
Excellent. Now, talk to us a little bit about your book, Building Confidence Through Violence. Anyone, I guess, in the blue pill world, as it were, who, if they get a look at this book, the title alone would trigger a lot of different people. What was the inspiration behind writing this book, and how has it been received?
So that's actually a talk I do. It's not actually a book. Maybe we'll make it one. But it's just the aspect of, it's really important for us to understand that through fighting, and it's not promoting people just go out and get in street fights, but through the aspect of growing up and being in positions where you're facing off against another man, and you can explore the violent side of your nature, right? Because we're not growing up in the forest and we're not hunting and all that stuff with spears and all that kind of thing anymore, right? So we need a place as men to explore that. We find that in mixed martial arts where we can have violence without emotion, right? Good sportsmanship where two dudes can smash each other and shake hands at the end, right? And learn about yourself and, understand that it's okay to get punched in the face. It's okay to lose. That sometimes when you get your ass kicked, that's when you learn the most about yourself, right? And you have the most growth when you lose, right? If you do it with the right mentality coming into it and you don't take it personally, you don't get emotional about it, but you can use it as a place to grow from, and also where you start to earn respect of other men, whether you lose or not. How you handle that failure, how you take those punches, is where you gain that respect from other men, right? And in that, you start to build respect for yourself and your friends, the women in your life, the friends in your life, your coworkers. Other people will start to respect you, and you'll have more self-confidence in the workspace, in all areas of your life. There's obviously other places where we can build our own self-esteem and self-respect, but in that's one that's being heavily throttled back in our environment, in my opinion, right? Of not letting men really explore that because they're supposed to be soft and kind and understanding. And it's like, yes, there's a time and place for that, but there's also a time and place for dudes just to smash stuff, you know what I mean? And to let that part of their nature out.
Excellent, excellent. Now, a couple of things that you mentioned just now, a rite of passage, and I'm gonna come to Tex with this. Men of a certain age probably remember the days where there really was a true rite of passage. That seems to be absent with today's youth. What is your opinion on how the 21 Convention can maybe sort of create a rite of passage for young men, and how can that help them moving forward?
Well, considering we won't be deer hunting here anytime soon, which is sort of was the, that was the rite of passage when I was growing up, right? We did things with our fathers and our uncles, and we went beyond the next step. And to a lot of young men these days, they don't have active fathers, they don't have active uncles, and almost by proxy, some of us become that to those guys. So we come together in a group like this. This is our hunt, right? We're sharpening our skills, we're sharpening our message to each other, and then these guys have gained these powerful concepts. They start to implement them in their own lives, then they can turn around and start helping other men as well. So that's the rite of passage. Just take that information, use it, become better at who you are, pass it on.
Excellent, excellent. Well said, Tex. Socrates, we're talking about the rite of passage for men. Let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about maybe a rite of passage for women, if there is such a thing. You've got a very young daughter. Okay, we've got the 22 Convention coming up. What are your thoughts on the 22 Convention? Are women going to show up? Can we help them? Do they want to be helped?
I'm asking myself the same questions. I honestly don't know. I know that there's been a lot of feedback on it. I can't imagine it not being triggering. It's just going to happen.
Sure.
Because I think it's so unique is that it's not being addressed. How that's going to play out, I honestly don't know. But I think there's goodwill, there's good intent, it's sincere. And I will say this, I think it's terribly, terribly needed. I think that there's this void of values and ideas and culturalization that we deal with adults. We just can't look at men and say we need to cultivate men.
Right.
And only be, if we were sitting and saying, hey, the sexes are meant for each other, and that's something I fundamentally believe, and we're compatible and complementary to each other, we can't be just developing a single sex, and I think that it is natural that we would have a 22 convention paralleling with the patriarch event.
Right.
And if we're talking about generating families, and we talk about the patriarch event being really not just about leading and developing a family, but cross-generational,
right.
Looking deep, into the future of your family history, or, the future, and making sure that your family is present, your genetics are being cast in the future. I've said on the stage repeatedly that I think it's both a right and an obligation. And I'm found that I have people coming back giving me feedback the first time I said it is like, I can't believe you said that, it was important, because you just don't hear that. I think we are taught self-sacrifice in a large measure of ways, and I think there's some beneficial elements to it. But, I can also sit down and say it can destroy you as well.
Right.
And I can't imagine my entire family history tree, or any of our family history trees, 250,000 generations in a genetic chain, and saying, I'm the weakest link. It ends here with me. That is an absolute human tragedy, and nature doesn't care.
Right.
It's going, and each day I don't live that existence, and I don't work towards that, I become increasingly irrelevant day by day, to the point of my own extinction. And so, being an older man, I'm now thoroughly looking at that. I look at my daughter, not just as me teaching a new adult or somebody who'll grow to an adult, it's not that she's an apprentice. She's truly my understudy to replace me.
Okay, wow.
And that you should look at fathering and parenting, whether it's a boy or a girl, in the same way and say, how do you replace me? How do my children best replace me? And that's your gift as a parent.
Excellent.
To make sure you train and cultivate that way.
Excellent. The extinction of the traditional American nuclear family, it appears to be on the horizon. And with that, I'm going to come to Ken Curry. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you're a licensed family counselor,
marriage and family therapist.
Marriage and family therapist. So you're more or less on the front lines. Okay, you're able to see what's happening. Give us a little bit of insight in terms of the problems that you're seeing. Why is the traditional American nuclear family becoming extinct, and what, if anything, can men like you do about it?
Wow. That's a big question. There's so many. Yeah, why it's taken a hit for sure, the family.
Can it be saved, do you think?
Of course.
Okay.
I think because it's nature. It's going, like, if everything hits the fan, that is the thing that is the bedrock. It's the foundation. It's the strength of society, of culture, of that. And so I think right now we live in this time of extreme abundance, and there's so much good stuff, and it's like we don't have to fight or scratch, but when it ever gets down to when we have to fight and scratch, it's going to come back.
Sure.
And so that's kind of, but that didn't really answer your question about why. And I don't know exactly why it's the family's faltering. I think there's a number of different things. There's the different things that are going on with the court systems, and divorce is just ravaging families. And gosh, I'm not sure how to answer that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't have a problem coming back to you on that. I think that's a question. I guess it's more or less a rhetorical question, but I'll point to this. I know one of the reasons why the extinction of the traditional American family seems to be on the horizon. I believe that it probably can be saved, but a couple of things that certainly don't help are guys like myself, and of course, to my right, the king of camera game, none other than Goldman Unleashed. Now, you and I don't really have a lot in common other than the fact that we've both lived on the Eastern Seaboard, and we've had our share of, let's call it, shenanigans with the second sex. A lot of guys point to us and say, you're the reason why the traditional American nuclear family is extinct. The players, you guys are sleeping with all these women, ruining them for relationships. What do you say to guys who say, you're the problem, you're the reason, you with this camera game and getting girls into bed, Donovan Sharp living this Vegas high life and all this other kind of stuff, you are ruining women. What's your response to that?
I don't know who says that. That's I've never come across it before. I think if you come from a place of honesty,
okay,
and you're like, I want to live this lifestyle, I want to experiment, I want to figure out what kind of women I'm actually attracted to, and you need to go through that phase.
Right.
I think most people are going to be pretty accepting, but we're not out there trying to destroy the family. We're
there you go.
honestly searching, like most of the players, the intelligent ones, they're looking for what they really like in a feminine woman.
Right.
And whatever it is, like sometimes you just got to experiment and go through the motions.
Now, you're a young guy. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is Goldman Unleashed going to have little gold nuggets in the future, or are we going to stay on the road and continue this bohemian road lifestyle here?
Well, I'm on the path right now where I really value my independence.
Okay.
And I like being alone, and I love bachelor life still. In the future, I mean, it's still up in the air.
Okay.
I don't know. I've got the fantasy of raising a boy.
Wow.
I said if I ever had a daughter, I'd go back to church.
Okay.
But
You would have to.
Yeah.
Yes.
It'd be kind of terrifying.
Yes.
But
Church
we'll
or the
see.
daughter.
We'll see.
One guy up here who is certainly not foregone fatherhood is my man, Steve the Dean Williams, sitting to my left, your right, of themanmindset.com. Now, Steve, you are the embodiment, in my mind, of the American dream. You've got a wife, you've got kids, you've got the picket fence, not 2.2 children, but I think you've got 4 or 5 children. You seem to really enjoy family life. You love your kids, you love your wife. You tell people about it all the time. Where do guys like you fit into the red pill community? How can guys like you convince guys like me who have decided that I'm not going to have children, have kids?
Well, I try to push. We need the electricity to go out so we can find out our true nature.
Wow.
Also, what's also important is your last name. I can't stress I'm a Williams, and I'm damn fucking proud to be a Williams, and my kids are Williamses, and the importance I always tell guys out there is that if you don't want a relationship now, don't have one, but don't let anybody scare you or make you fearful of having a relationship. If your great-great-grandfather thought like some of you right now, you wouldn't be here, you know? And these are things that you got to think about, because the best part about it is being able to watch your future. I'm not going to be here forever, but I'm going to go on. That's what I know through my name and through my kids' names. But it's not just through my sons. Like Socrates, I have daughters too, and my name guy has to go on through them. They have no choice but to treat a man with ultimate respect. They have no choice but to submit and serve to a man. They have no choice to make sure that he is taken care of. Why? Because dad made sure that that is part of being a Williams, and that's part of a legacy. And for those guys out there, it's not, and I'm just real quick, it's not the end of the marriage, guys. The marriage is the beginning, just like what Texas said. I mean, marriage is an ultimate pat on the back of showing the world, this is my representation. This woman I call my wife has my name. She has my ring. She has my rules, laws, codes, narratives, and principles. But for those that are trying to grow as men, this is part of, not, I won't say the end result, but it's a beginning of an end result. Because one thing I don't want you to understand is, if it's the end result, that means it can't go any higher. It's just a part of it. And for you guys, learning who you are, laws, rules, codes, principles, and narratives, but most importantly, last thing, learning your last fucking name and knowing what it means to you first before you give it to somebody else.
That's last fucking name.
Preach it.
Guys, preach that. Now, Stephen, this is the first time I've met you. This is your first 21 convention. Talk to me about what your experience has been like and why you decided to join us for the 1821 convention.
Well, I heard about the convention from a friend of mine, Jack Donovan. I'd had him on my podcast. He's been a source in my book, Hard Times Create Strong Men. And I saw you guys in Poland. It looked awesome. I sent him a message. I said, hey, man, how do I get on this convention? I ended up talking to Anthony. And you guys have a great room of people. These are young guys. They're not so young guys. They're hungry. Every man here wants to reach his potential, whatever that means. And I like the variety of topics. I was looking online. Apparently, we like to watch videos of how to pick up chicks mostly. But besides picking up chicks, there's a diversity of things here. And I'd written a book called Hard Times Create Strong Men. It was what is a man in the modern world in money, sex, religion, politics. It's got violence. It's got killing. It's rated R. So I never planned on writing a men's book, but here I am. Joining the convention, and I've got a real estate investing background, so I think I can add something on the money side, but also the how to be a man side. So I'm pretty excited to be here. It's a great group of guys and lots of intelligent men who are trying to become better. So there's nothing bad you can say about a group of guys like that.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, you have a background in real estate. What's the importance? Because I talked about this in my speech: body, mind, and finances.
Was that the BMW?
It was the BMW. I was trying to stay away from the copyright laws of the actual BMW car, so I guess I'm going to call it
W for
BMW.
wealth.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, there it is. There it is. I wanted to make people think that it was going to be women, but then I pulled the old switcheroo. What are your thoughts on finances? You're a self-made millionaire.
Yeah.
Every man says, I don't want to work for someone else. I want to be a self-made millionaire. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be my own boss. I've been my own boss before. I'm my own boss now. Talk to us about some of the drawbacks of being your own boss. Having the name Stefan Arnio on the bottom of your check, writing checks to yourself. We all know what the benefits are. Talk to us about some of the drawbacks that most people
my
don't
checks
understand.
are corporate, so none of them say Stefan Arnio. I got a bunch of corporations. But, I think it is a dream for men to work for themselves or have their own enterprise. But I mean, think about this. Do you want your wife working for another man, or do you want her working for you? So
you go.
like, that's the next step is you can retire your wife. You can have your kids working for her. I think there's all sorts of great things with having a business. Is it tough? Yes. It's motherfucking difficult getting rich or dying trying. But what are you guys going to do in this life? I mean, I talked about it in my speech, a man's purpose is his work.
That's right.
And, you're either going to fill some other man's purpose or, can you go out there and stake a claim? And most businesses have a 90% failure rate in the first 5 years. And if you survive 5 years, you got 90% chance of failure in the second 5. So you got 99% chance of failure. But you should still try. You know, try 10 businesses, go and do it. And the only thing that you're gonna learn, or the worst thing that can happen, is you fail, and then you just go try again. America is, the greatest country, or was the greatest country in the world at one point, because America in the West has bankruptcy laws where even if you fuck it up and you lose everything, you're not going to debtor prison. Right. It's not Dubai. It's not India. It's not some place where failing actually will ruin you, or there's intergenerational debt. Well, there is with student loans now.
Oh, Jesus, yes.
But America is a free country, and, I'm from Canada. It's a free country, too. You can try. Go try. And you know what? Even if you go bust or you go bankrupt, that'll wipe your slate clean, and you'll just go try again. And that's the beautiful thing about this place is you should try. You need to try. And if you don't try, what's your life even about?
No, I agree 100%. Well said. Let's switch gears here and go back to the 22 convention. And Rich Graham is your name. I thought your name was Rich Grannon. I don't know where I got that from.
It's all good.
Probably misheard. He's a Navy SEAL. I had to apologize. So the 22 convention is going to be for women by men. And Goldman, you talked about feminine women, okay? Today, femininity has many different definitions, as well as masculinity. Masculinity is what the 21 convention is about. What are your thoughts on the 22 convention? I'll ask you what I asked Socrates. Obviously, it's necessary. Do you think women are going to show up? And if they do, what's the age demographic going to be? Are we going to have young, pretty girls? Or are we going to have post-wall women looking for a come-up? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Come up.
Who's this question for?
That's you.
Oh,
yes.
Me.
He tried to get out of it. Wait a minute.
Yeah, because that is a tough one. I mean, I don't really know. I think the women I see interacting with the manosphere seem pretty genuine. They seem feminine. I wouldn't say they're young.
Okay.
So,
Probably not.
I wouldn't say they're young. They've been burned before. And I think we're going to see women who are just trying to make the most out of themselves. And if they're looking to us, they're really seeking something, and they don't have that. The biggest problem I see with the young women today is their egos are just completely out of control. So the women who do show up looking to really improve themselves, I think they're going to be humble about it and really truth seeking, which I totally respect.
Excellent.
Can I weigh in on that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I got a book right now I'm working on called The Oracle, the Queen, the Princess, and the Whore, and it's hard times for women. Yeah, those are 4 types of women. So I normally had a 90% male audience, 10% female when I was just doing real estate and money. And then I started talking about what men ought to be. And as soon as I opened the conversation up to what men ought to be, the women came out. They said, "Oh, I got something to say about that."
I'll get the hell out of here with that. Yeah.
So what ended up happening is my audience has doubled for women now. And the women, first of all, I say, well, you can't read Hard Times. It's for men only. And as soon as you tell a woman she can't have it, she's going to read it.
Of course.
So now she reads Hard Times. She's like, I like this, but then she says, but what about women? So I have this what about women discussion happening on my social media. What's interesting is there's a couple types of women. There's the married woman who's feminine, and she's got 3 kids, and she puts her kids' names in the Instagram description.
Yeah.
And she's married to an army guy, and she's straight up this is what my kids are going to learn, Hard Times, I love you. Then you got the woman who's you got the woman who's a successful female, maybe she's got a business, but
alpha female,
and she's having trouble finding a strong enough man to make her feel like a woman.
Right.
So you might get some of those, but I think the 22 convention, this is my hypothesis, I don't want to say anything negative, I think it's going to be kind of like cruise ships, where cruise ships, they have the men and the women together, and the men pay for the women to come because the men want to have sex with them. Yes. That's how it works. And then there's the gay cruise, where there's 4,000 men, and they're all gladiators, and they're all gay, and they're having sex with each other, and they're paying to come on the cruise. And I looked at it, and I was like, why is there no singles cruise for straight men, straight women? It's because the women won't pay. So to get women to pay to come to a thing, like you said, the young women, they got egos. So they're like, I'm hot, I don't need you. But the reality is, in the long-term game, 100% of the women are competing for the top 3% of men.
That's right.
So they do need it, but they don't know they need it. So to answer that marketing question, to make the women know they need it when they're hot and they're young and they have 50 guys in their DMs sending them dick pics, it's going to be hard to crack through that barrier somehow. So I think it's a mega challenge telling a hot woman she's not hot and she has to come learn. Oh boy.
Yeah, right. Good luck with that.
And real quick, Donovan,
Go ahead, Steve.
it's until their pussies start looking like chewed up meat is when they're gonna start realizing.
Hashtag roast beef.
What did I say? What?
You mean when it goes from ham to roast beef?
Roast
Yes,
beef, yeah,
there it
that's like chewed up mincemeat, that they start to get that realization that, oh my God, now it's time for me to package it up, pack it on in, fix it, sew it up, screw it in, and to find a guy. And,
I think that there is this younger, less damaged generation coming along, a little more conservative. I mean, there was a lot of polling data in 2016 when Trump won of high school seniors and juniors, how they would have voted, and Trump overwhelmingly won that demographic. And if that type of a person will end up here at some point, and not get damaged to the point that they'll never show up because they're waiting for some sugar daddy to pay for it. I don't know, but I think there's hope there. How do we get them here? That's the challenge, right?
Well, you're going to have to hit the churches, and you're going to have to go through their fathers. No jokes.
As you should.
Amen.
It's going to be churches and fathers, and you almost have to get the men here to bring whatever women they have.
Yeah.
But it also seems like the men here have trouble pulling women. That's why they talk about pulling women. So now we're back to the chicken and the egg. So that's a marketing challenge, man.
Challenges for sure. And Rich, I want to come to you about the 22 convention. I have a very good friend of mine. He knows a woman. She's, I think, 34, 35 years old, beautiful redhead, hot body, but she was in the Marines, very, very hyper masculine. And it's just like, I think it was Steven who talked about, the strong women who are looking for a man that is strong enough to deal with or handle a woman like her. What are your thoughts on the 22 convention in terms of women in the military? Obviously, the 22 convention is going to preach traditional femininity. What kind of women come through the Marines, if any, and what are your thoughts on the lax standards of the military with regards to sort of allowing women to sort of be under the bar?
So with that, I would extend that past the women in the military, and I would put that into military spouses, right?
Yep.
Because if you're married to a military man, or even if you're a man married to a military woman, if you're married to someone in the military, you take on a lot of the burden that the soldier does, right? So when they go on deployment, you're back stateside handling all the thing as a single parent, but you're not a single parent.
Right. Isn't that where
Does that
she
make
gets
sense?
a boyfriend? That's
What's
where
that?
when he's deployed, that's when she gets the boyfriend, though.
Every time.
Sometimes, yeah. So
Dude, I saw that.
and there is a lot of that stuff that happens, right? But in the big picture of it, you have spouses that want to help push forward, and they're usually the ones that stay are very strong, independent women who can handle being away from their husband for 6 months, 3 months. I know when I was in the SEAL teams, even when I wasn't on deployment, I was gone 300 plus days out of the year training.
Wow.
Right? Wow. So on deployment years, okay, cool, you're gone for 6 months at a time, but you were never really there even when you were there. So it's pays a heavy toll on that family. And I've done a ton of work with veteran suicide prevention, and we have this programs that I've worked with and been involved with where we bring the military men, the veterans who are suffering from PTSD or they're trying to get their life back on order, right? And we bring them out and try to get them spiritual healing and get them their lives back on direction, right? One of the things that we constantly hear from the spouses or from the women are, how come that's only for men? We want to be involved. We're part of this family too. We want to get the coaching that our husbands are getting, or find out what is it that we do on our side of this relationship? What do we do on our side with the kids to help? They're going and getting this healing or trying to get their life back on order. But if nothing changes back in the house, then nothing truly changes. It's a temporary fix.
Right. Yeah.
When I work with the canine units, right, people all the time ask me to come train their dog. And I'm like, I can train your dog and your dog's going to work for me. When I hand the dog back to you and you bring it back into that same environment, don't be surprised when the dog lashes out and does all the same crap it does. And then when I walk in and I take that lead, it's going to behave because we haven't changed the dynamic in the or the environment within that home. So I think it's a very important thing not to go away from talking about military women who are serving, but just on a broader perspective of the 22 convention. I think there is a market there for people who want to salvage a marriage and people who want to continue to build a strong family, right? I think there is a place for them, and there is a place for that dual learning and that dual growth between the husband and the wife and translating down into the children. As far as the women in the military, there's people who come from all different backgrounds. I can't speak on what every single woman's desire is to join the military. Again, they're entering an environment that is very masculine, and there is a lot of pushback and resentment because a lot of the fighting class of the military doesn't want the standards to drop to fit one or two women who may be able to make the cut, right? I think there's a great role for women in the military, generally speaking, as far as in the intelligence community and all that kind of stuff. Women are way more perceptive to all that stuff than men in. So as far as the espionage side of the house goes and the intelligence gathering and other support roles, I think there's definitely a place for them. In the combat roles, I don't know if they were going to do a combat role, I think the women should have an all women's unit combat role, right? Versus integrating them. Just from my personal observation, you can sugarcoat it however you want, and you can say this stuff doesn't happen. We're going to be fucking professional. The reality is, almost every time when you put a woman in the middle of a group of men, right? The whole dynamic, whether she ever hooks up with any or not, the dynamic of the men having one woman in a mix of 20, 30, 50, 100 men, it changed the dynamic because now they're all in competition.
Yep.
Right?
That's exactly right.
So the distraction, and whether we want to say we're going to be professional or not, it's our nature. We can't
That's
help
right.
it.
It's biology.
It's biology, right? So why they join, I don't know, but I do think there is definitely a place for coaching the women within that 22 convention for building stronger families.
Excellent. Well said. Well said. Ken, I'm going to come to you with this. The strong and independent woman. Society tells our women that you can have it all. You can have the job, the career, you can make the money, the power husband, the kids, the SUV, and all that stuff. What is the strong and independent woman? What effect does that have on the traditional nuclear family? Is it good? Listen, obviously, I think it's terrible. Any woman that says, well, you can't handle a strong woman. And my response to that is, well, listen, I'm sure you can handle a bratty kid. That doesn't mean you want to. What are your thoughts on what's happening with the American family, and how is the strong and independent woman negatively affecting the American family?
And you're giving me some questions that are killing me.
You've got you have a degree.
No, the whole idea of strong and independent, actually, that's being an adult.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
But the whole thing of what that translates into a relationship is, we're just talking about the alpha female or whatever.
Yeah.
And if that's what it translates to, where I have to be in control and I have to be the strong one, then that's problematic.
Yeah.
But naturally, it seems to me in the work that I'm doing on the front lines that most women do not want to be the strong one when it really comes down to it.
That's right.
And so they want somebody that's stronger. They want somebody to decide. They want somebody to lead. And so in my work, that's in marriage counseling, it's like, how do we build that where we have a really good leadership structure? And actually, it's more about just each person in the marriage becoming whole, and becoming healthy and being themselves. And I think a lot of the strong independent narrative is just a lie.
Yeah.
It's not what women want. I don't want to necessarily be independent. I would love to be dependent. I don't want to be strong. I would love to be with somebody who is strong. And so, yeah.
That's a good answer. I knew you could do it. So obviously the 21 convention, I think Goldman mentioned, or I think Stefan actually said, young hot girls are not coming to the 22 convention. They've got all the answers. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it as far as they're concerned. And we could talk about that. What do we do with our daughters, Sock? How do we raise our daughters to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, but by the same token, train them to, hey, listen, when you do meet that strong male who can take charge and give you a good life, how can we teach them to be traditionally submissive?
It's going to be by example.
Okay.
So you sit down and say, I've got a 4-year-old daughter. I have to make sure that I'm present, I'm there, I'm involved. And so you're going to see me taking a much more active role day to day, more than I'm even now. And it's in responsive. I know that our middle child right now, Juan, just graduated or earned his Eagle Merit Badge.
Okay.
And it was
Oh,
interesting
wow.
seeing that. And then also seeing in conjunction for the first time the Girl Scout troop associated with that. And these girls were active, dynamic, and however you feel about it, I was kind of torn on it because I really would like to see a boys' space, but at the same time, Girl Scouts is heinous to the point that little girls are rejecting it.
Yeah.
And so we can complain about the age that we live in and the conditions we're at, but you have to deal with that. This is where we're at. And so consequently, I firmly believe that she's going to go through Boy Scouts as a girl. I'm going to be terribly involved with that, and then supplementing that as well. And part of this is that, I used to host an event at my house with the 21 convention, invite everybody over, have them come over, and she absolutely loves it. I know Tanner's recently spoken about the potentiality of the rise of arranged marriages, and I see the value of that as well. Having been very close to that myself, of relationships and family structures, and having attraction, and knowing that you have your family's blessing, and it's a good match, overall. They're looking at your interests, the family's interests, everything else. But at the same time, I see my daughter interacting with the guys of the 21 convention.
Right.
And if you sit down and say, who am I associating with as a man? Would I not want to introduce my family to him, let alone my daughter?
Wow.
And so she is going to have 20 years experiences with men like Goldman, we have with Rich here, and I can definitely tell you, she's going to go through Rich's training. There's absolutely zero doubt in my mind that's going to be taking place. And so part of that is that understudy of, you're replacing me as a human being. You're going to be carrying that through. And that can take any number of guises and approaches, but I think you're going to start to see fathers involved with their children's lives in ways in which our own fathers probably weren't nearly as hands-on. We know about the emphasis on increased parenting face time with children, both mothers and fathers. I think that's going to continue throughout a child's life, well past the adult, 18, 21 years. And we're going to be looking much further down the road of continuing adult. And I say the 21 convention, 22 convention, I start to believe that we're going to start to see more and more fathers with sons. We're going to see mothers with daughters. We're going to see couples. And we may even have an entire family group showing up. That would be great. Can you imagine that? And I don't think that's that far along. If you sit down and say the 21 convention has been going roughly, 10, 12 years?
Yeah.
If we say 5 years, look how far we've come in that time period, or how much the manosphere has changed in that period of time. I see this being reflected. I see an organization like this leading culture where culture is completely flagging. And one of the things that frightens me most is I look at today's politics and culture and how out of touch I think politicians are with culture. And then what really scares me is the idea that they may not be, and what the blowback on that will be. And I think in many ways we need to get back to a standard in which culture drives politics, not the other way around.
Well said. Steve, you have daughters.
Yes.
How do we raise our daughters to not need the 22 convention?
To not need it?
Yeah,
How do people raise them to not need it?
that's right.
Well, I think what's happening, they're gonna need, well, what they need first is a panel of strong men. Because without the men leading them, they're gonna be blind to the information.
Right.
Because strong men are gonna do one thing that most can't, and that is being honest and keeping things 100 with them, and letting them know that, just like I think you were saying about life, the life doesn't give a fuck about you. We're gonna come in, it's either gonna eat you up, spit you out. But also you gotta learn that as a young lady growing up to be an adult lady and growing up to be a grown woman, that you have to understand it's not about your wants. You may want him to open the door and give you flowers, but that's not what it's about.
Right.
You may want to hear guys out there that's giving you bad information, and that's the thing that we've got to educate them on. There are guys out there coddling these. It's okay, these guys are all bad guys, and they don't have your interest at heart because they're trying to tell you that you've got to submit to a man. If you're biblical,
That's the snake.
there you go. So what's important here, they need it because it's not just coming from one man. All children, again, we have an array of men coming from different communities. We're all communities coming together to be at the table.
Right.
This is the table. But young girls, women alike, need to see men at the table, to see men interact at the table, to see men discuss. We don't have to agree on everything, but like you were saying, I think you were saying we can fight at 12 o'clock high or 3 o'clock, and then we go play football the next, but that's how men are. But they need to see men in an environment. That's why I say turn the lights off and let them experience what nature really is in us, where there's no computer, no internet, no Lifetime channel. Real quick, I just saw some bullshit today where young boys are walking around talking about I'm on my period.
Oh,
I'm on my
are you
fucking
serious?
period, walking around with a little Tampax string coming out their drawers. I'm like, what the fuck is it? I'm sorry, I didn't change. But anyway, but what I'm saying is that this is why we're here. But to wrap it up, this is why all women need this, because we are going to do one thing that most can't, and that's going to be an honest assessment, because we're all successful. But the thing about success, you want to learn from success.
Right.
Because the thing about success doesn't play by your rules.
Right.
You've got to learn success. But the only way you're going to learn it is being by successful men.
So you're talking about examples, right? You want to know how to raise a bunch of good little feminists? Have a bunch of weak fathers that aren't doing their fucking jobs, right? Because what happens is women are fucking resilient. They're in a family, they've got a weak husband. Guess what they do? They pick up the reins, right? They pick up the chore. They make it happen to protect their family. Little girl grows up and sees mommy in charge.
Yeah.
That's how you get more little blue-haired feminists.
Happy wife, happy life.
Blue-haired.
where does this
Stephen, I
start?
want to come to you
I
with.
want to add to that for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I read a great internet meme, and it said, women fuck who they want, men fuck who they can.
Right.
And then the rebuttal to it was, men marry who they want.
That's right.
And
Women
then
marry who they can.
women marry who they can.
Yeah.
And I think that with the 22 convention, if you actually target women who are like 30 and it's like, hey, want to get married actually to an actual strong man? Come here, they're here. And PS will teach you how to actually become marriageable, because that's a real problem. Like,
Yes.
I'm 33 and I'm relatively single guy. And I go out in the market, and women who are 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31 to 35, disaster for those women.
Yep.
They're used, they're abused. They need to go to like a life repair class. Like, they need vaginal reconstruction.
Yep.
They need to have
Hymen
their
reconstruction.
brain erased like the Men in Black with that pen
fleshy
that they
thingy.
look at. They need everything, because guys like us have handled them on Tinder for like 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And now they're totally fucked up. And then guys like me is looking at the girl who's 22 or 23 instead of the girl who's 27. And you almost have to target that and be like, hey, girls, come get fixed up. Like, this is like the repair class, like, husband prep class, pre-marriage class, because they do want to be married.
Sure.
But they're subscribing to the whore culture that we have, and we have a huge whore culture now.
Yes.
And they got a piercing through their face, a tramp stamp on their face, and the purple hair, and all this bullshit. And then one day they wake up and they realize they got to put on a sundress, get rid of the tattoos, and shut the fuck up and get back to like what her dad told her to do.
Well, here's the
first place.
problem.
Yeah.
They realize this at 37, 38 years old.
It's
And by
game
then it's
over.
too late. Yeah, it's too late.
And that's the young women. And the other thing with the problem with women is women want everything, and they don't know what they want. So they're like, I want to be married, don't want to be married. Touch me, don't touch me. Look at me, don't look at me. I'm wearing a boob shirt. Why are you looking at my boobs? So it's like there's all this like double thought
Yeah.
that goes on with women. So it's like we have single thoughts, men. We think about one thing. It's usually sex. Women think about everything, and then they have these contradictory thoughts. I want to be strong, but I want to be dependent. I want you to be strong, but I want you to yield to me sometimes. So
Right.
it's like this paradoxical thing that you have to deal with. That I think you got to hit them. Want to get married? Come get fixed up.
I like it. I don't think it's a paradox at all. I think that women want all the benefits without any of the costs. That's what it comes down
That's
to.
human nature.
And
Well, that's to me, that's weak human nature. We men up here, we understand that success comes at a price. You want to be a millionaire, you want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, guess what? You're going to have to sacrifice sleep and relationships. That's how it works. To take it to a sports reference, we've got Andy Reid and Tony Dungy, both Hall of Fame football coaches. Both have had sons commit suicide. If they were not NFL head football coaches, chances are their sons would still be here today, right? There are sacrifices that have to be made. Unfortunately, women these days get all of the benefits without any of the costs. And in my opinion, Stefan, having a real estate background that you do, or you have a real estate background, to me, there are only three main areas that women truly embrace femininity. That's in pharmaceutical sales, infidelity, and real estate. What are your experiences with women in the real estate industry? Are they traditionally feminine because they want to be or because they have to be?
So women who are realtors are savages.
Of course.
They're motherfucking savages. They're super slutty. They're dangerous. If you meet one in the wild, beware. Approach with caution. Oh, seriously, they're hardened, man.
Yeah.
Because you know what? They go in and they're like, oh, you know, I didn't do so well in school, or like talking to people, so I'm a realtor now. And they're fine for a bit, but then they get chewed out and spit out by men like me. And then after a while, they turn super hard, and they're pretty much men.
Right.
Like they're street, like real estate's street negotiating. It is actually like drug dealing or prostitution or the music business. You're out there on the street, you're negotiating, and they get super hard. And I think that's one of the problems for women. I read about in my book, The Oracle. They lose their femininity by living as a man. So
Yes.
they live their masculine purpose of their work, and they lose their femininity along the way. And then somehow they have to find that again. And it's not like Humpty Dumpty. You don't just put Humpty Dumpty back together again. In fact, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't even do it. So
Well, all the king's horses and all the king's men are plowing these women on the regular. And what it really comes down to, and I've said this before on my show, is that women who are hyper successful, the lawyers, the doctors, the CEOs, the executives, the more success, the more resources, the more power and influence a woman attains, the further she shrinks her pool of potential suitors. Because Susie, the CEO at the Fortune 500 company, she doesn't want to date the janitor. She doesn't want to fuck the junior partner. No. She wants to marry the CEO of the Fortune 1000 company. And what women these days don't realize is that the more, I guess, financially successful they become, the less feminine they become. And the reason for that is it's exactly what you said. In order to be hyper successful financially, you got to be cutthroat. Right? Like you have to have like a street level drug dealer type mentality. In order to be successful, you have to act like a man. And what happens is that if you act like a man long enough, eventually you become one. And then you've got these 37, 38-year-old cat women who are wondering, well, where have all the good men gone? Well, I was going to ask you the same thing. I actually thought that you were a man. So I think that women these days are very, very, I think they're extremely misguided in that they don't understand that you can have it all. It's just not going to be the way you want it. I'm going to come to text with this to wrap up the 22 convention discussion here. You have a very submissive wife in every sense of the word.
Only to me.
Only to you. That's exactly right. That's an important distinction to make. How did you do it?
Relentless effort of just being me, because you got two people butting heads all the time. That's what it came down to. I mean,
Right.
I can't make her submissive.
Right. There you go.
Right. I can create an environment where she wants to be. Right. And finally, you know, the reality of what we're doing wasn't working, that kind of thing. And so she changed her mind and said, okay, you know, I'm going to look and figure out what makes me happy. She came up with this on her own. I might be submissive. I'm like, I've known this for a long time. She finally figured it out. That's all. You know, I mean, I kept being myself all the way along, and you can only be one person drive the bus. And finally, she figured it out after 20-something years. You know?
It takes a while, right?
But you can't make anybody submit, but you can make them want to.
I like it. You are listening and watching the 84th edition of Red Man Group Live. We're at the 18th 21 convention. We're really going to change gears here now. We're going to talk politics. The 2020 presidential campaign is kind of sort of underway. It's going to be in full operational mode probably right around the first quarter of 2020. The manosphere, I believe, is going to be highly affected, but I don't know if it's going to be effective in the 2020 election. I'm going to start with Rich. What are your thoughts, man, on the 2020 election? Obviously, we have the Make Women Great Again hat, which closely resembles the Make America Great Again. What effect do you think the 2020 presidential campaign and subsequent election is going to have on the manosphere and the red pill community, if any?
Well, I think it's this election cycle, more so the last one, but this one to solidify it as probably one of the most important election cycles of our history.
I agree.
Right?
Let me interrupt you quickly.
Yeah.
I said this on the night of the 2016 election. The 2020 election, I think that's going to be the election with the highest number of voters. We are going to have the most number of voters at the polls in U.S. history.
Yeah. And it's extremely dangerous times, and it's very disappointing times at the same time as we look at it. There's never been a time in our country where more people have been pulled towards socialism, communism, fascism, even though they're redefining what those words mean, right? So the people who are supporting that stuff don't even realize, a lot of these kids don't even realize that what they're supporting, right? Because they're redefining what fascism is. They've changed the definition. But just the sheer fact that on the Democratic Party, you have all these people running on a democratic socialist platform, it blows my mind that you could even run for the presidency if, again, our entire government is supposed to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Right. Then how can you even possibly run on socialist platform when that's complete tyranny? And that was well defined and documented in the early stages as they made the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and those other founding documents. So from when I just look at this, I just sit back as a veteran, right, as an American, and I go, how is this even possible?
Right.
Like, how could you even possibly run on that ticket and have that actually be legitimate? So I think we're in a very interesting time because here in the state of Florida, when we had our midterm elections, 49% of the state voted for someone who was running on a socialist, democratic socialist platform, and the state held being a Republican run state by literally 1%. So if a state
troubling.
like Florida and Texas are teetering at that 50% mark, if Florida and Texas go, I have fears that maybe that's something that turns into a civil war. I believe we're in a cold civil war right now.
Digital civil war.
Yeah, it's not kinetic, but
Right.
there's definitely a war going on behind the scenes that's going to define, are we a free nation or are we going where we're completely run our tyranny?
Yeah, Tex. I'm going to turn to my Texas boys here. Texas is the reddest of red state, but Rich just said it's 49%.
No, it really is. We've got the whole border area, which is heavily Hispanic, which has a lot of Democratic influence down there, a lot of handouts, a lot of big government coming in and saving programs. We've got a lot of California folks moving to Austin, Dallas, the areas like that. So yeah, Texas is one of those states. I don't think it's going to go blue anytime soon. But I mean, right now, like we said, it's a digital war going on right now. You've got the blue church, which is the media. You've got these woke corporations that support this whole thing. And then you've got Trump being the head of this, like what they call the red insurgency, right? He's the alpha male that resonated with so many guys in 2015 and 2016. You may not like him, but at least he's telling everybody to fuck off, right? Strongly. And so people are going to be drawn to that when they're sick and tired. I traveled all over the South 4 years ago or 3 years ago, and I kept saying, Trump's got a chance. Everybody's like, oh, hell no, hell no. I'm like, no, everybody's pissed off, right? And if everybody continues to be pissed off, we get the big turnout. It's going to be, I think it's going to be the pivotal election for probably the next 200 years.
Wow.
I do.
Steve, you live in Texas. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think it's going to go blue, but as a black man, I don't want to do the as a black man thing, but I'm going to do as a black man thing.
You're black?
Yeah, am I black? I know. I know. I just thought it was a man. But
Nobody thought I was black until they actually saw me on the
I
internet.
know you're
Yeah.
good though. You're
Yeah.
pretty tan.
Keep
Okay.
used to- yeah,
So
anyway.
the problems and issues that I everything y'all saying is absolutely correct. But from what I see from a African American, which Jesse Jackson made up in the '80s to run for president. But anyway,
Oh, God, what a joke that
as
was.
an African American, the biggest issues that I see is that a lot of young black men and women see Donald Trump as the dad that they never had, the dad that mom fucked but left her. So there's a lot of anger with these young kids. They would rather stand in line for a Popeye's chicken sandwich
Jesus Christ.
and just buy it out of order instead of learning that what Trump is doing is he's trying to give you backbone. And I think what we need to do, what I'm trying to do, is get blacks off of the Democratic plantation to cross over and see success. I tell people, watch House of Cards. You can see, like you're saying, the digital war. All you got to do is watch House of Cards or any political movie or show, and you'll see that you're the joke. They tell you in your face, well, we're down in the polls, go out there and kiss a few babies, go to the black churches, stand and hug Hillary Clinton with the hot sauce and, all that.
Look at the shit Kanye's catching for being a Trump supporter, right?
Kanye, right. Yeah, and it's like we're a bunch of buffoons and idiots because it's act like we can't think for ourselves. And it's like that now I'm on my soapbox. This shit pisses me the fuck off because Trump to me is success. He's successful in the business world and he's a successful president. But the reason why he's success because he doesn't give a fuck. He's going to just tell it like it is. Where quote unquote Barry, Obama, who was dangling his balls to his wife and his spine to his wife is probably running shit anyway. They want to protect him. So I just think as a black man, for us, we've got to, well, not we, but guys like myself and Donovan and Ed, you too, I see you over there, Ed. We've got to show through our successes that we've got to stop making excuses. We've got to stop pointing the finger. We've got to be more accountable. We've got to be more responsible for our actions and don't blame a successful, quote unquote, white man. Treat him as your president. He is a president. You've got to honor him like you should, but they don't. But I'm just saying, it's not going to go blue anytime soon, but within not just Texas, but all over the United States, these are the problems we're having with the Democratic plantation.
And by the way, the reason why... And by the way, Michelle Obama has bigger traps than Barack. It's probably why. Probably why she runs the family there.
Bigger balls.
Stefan,
too.
you had something. You had something to add.
Yeah,
I tried to keep
I
together.
like what he was saying. This is probably the biggest election in American history. Like this is the whole country is swinging on this. Now I'm Canadian. I'm not American, but I wear my American sweater all the time because I love freedom. I think that America is the representation of freedom in the West. And if America goes, the whole West goes. You've got Europe going, Canada will go, Australia, New Zealand, everybody goes. And in my book, Hard Times Create Strong Men, I talk about the cycles of history. And 2020 is a big year because 80 years ago was World War II. And every 80 years, there's a massive conflict, a massive war. It was World War II 80 years ago. 80 years before that was American Civil War. And that cycle of history goes all the way back to the Middle Ages. So we're going to have some sort of conflict. Is it going to be a civil war? Is it going to be a petrodollar conflict with Russia and China? Who knows? But that's coming on the edge. The second thing that's happening pretty soon that's scary is democracy only lasts for 250 years, and then the people start voting prizes. So, Aristotle says that masculine republics give way to feminine democracies, which give way to tyranny. So 2026 is the 250-year birthday of the United States. And who knows what's going to be left over by the time you get to 2026. You might have a tyranny of whoever's in there. And then the other thing is it will be Trump because typically when the economy's good in the first 4 years, he gets a second term.
Oh, that's a good
whoever it is.
point.
So if the economy's good, if it holds out until whenever the election is, Trump will get in again. And then what they usually do with the banks and the central banks who are printing money right now, they're doing quantitative easing, but they're calling it not quantitative easing. They're printing $100 billion a day right now. They're going to lift the veil off the economy after Trump gets back in.
Okay.
So that's what they did with Obama, if you recall. You know, they had Obama get in, and then they lifted the veil right after. It was boom, Wall Street's melting down, and here's the problem. So I think that's going to happen. And then the question becomes, after Trump's second term, is it going to be Trump Jr. and Trump becomes the prime minister of America, and now you have an emperor Trump?
Oh, boy.
That's the real question, because Julius Caesar did that, and that's a 250-year birthday. That's only 6 years away. So there's two crazy things going on. 2020 is a war year. It's supposed to be war. 2026 is supposed to be tyranny. So watch out, guys. It's going to be quite the show.
Speaking of which, breaking news. It looks like President Donald Trump has confirmed the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. I think that'll certainly help in the upcoming election. Yeah. Goldman, you and I were talking before we went live about New York City. You decided to, hit the road. New York City, at least the area of Brooklyn that you were in, is almost like the East Coast version of San Francisco. It's obviously very very left leaning, very socialist. Oh, we see Texas is not going to be a red state anytime soon. Does New York have a chance to become a blue state anytime soon? Does New York have a chance to become a red state anytime soon? Or okay, all right, he's already nodding no.
That's not going to happen. But I do want to add this because we're talking about how politics in the manosphere ended up making this crazy marriage.
Let's do it.
Because like the dating scene is so interconnected with politics, especially now. You can't go out in a city like New York and just have a regular conversation with a girl at a bar. And then within 10 minutes, she's talking about politics. And every single one of them is like not just a Democrat, but a Trump hater.
Right.
A feminazi.
Yes.
And I always said, what I learned to say in the past couple of years is just like when we had that conversation, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't hate Trump. And they looked at me like I had three heads. Didn't say I supported him, just like I don't hate him. And they looked at me like I was crazy. And so what I see is that the men in these cities, these the soy boys, the millennials, they will bend over backwards to please the women. And it comes down to politics. And it was driving me fucking insane to see all these guys. And I know they didn't really feel that on the inside. Sure. They were just trying to get pussy. And that's when they're like, yeah, we hate Trump, vote Hillary, wearing the shirts and shit. The future is feminine. I had to leave. So that's what I see happening. And I do see it getting worse, especially the weaker the men are, the more they're going to follow the women. The women are always going to be to the left politically. And that's what I see in the big cities. And it's worrisome.
Yeah, it is. Ken, let me come to you with this.
Sure.
And Goldman makes a good point. I've always said that something has to get worse before it gets better. How is the family unit going to be affected? Let's just say whatever Democratic nominee wins the election. Do you think the family will take a setback if the Democrats take over the White House? Or do you think it's going to, I guess what I'm really asking is it going to be beneficial or is it going to be a detriment if a Democrat takes over the White House? Or is the family unit strong enough to at least be held together?
Well, I think the family unit, just like I was saying, it's a natural thing. It's going to be held together eventually regardless. It's going to be something that is hopefully it will become stronger. But I think what you're kind of saying is it's this concept of things have an order, and then they move into disorder and then reorder. And it's kind of what's happening to the 21 convention.
Yeah,
right? Where we have had a certain kind of order. And the thing that's actually good about what's going on right now, everything is out in the open.
Yeah.
At least it's in the open. We know who is who. Before it was kind of like we're this, but we're not telling you exactly what we're doing. But now it's all out in the open. And so I think if something happens that's super disruptive, whatever that civil war looks like, or that's a disruption, that's moving order into disorder. And I think it will eventually move into a reorder of something that has substance. And I think the family, this is my hope, would be the foundation for that reorder.
There were people that got divorced over Trump versus Hillary.
Right?
They got freaking divorced over it.
They got a chicken sandwich?
Think about that, okay? Think about that.
I mean, at this point, I mean, nothing can divide a nation like a presidential campaign and a chicken fucking sandwich. Like, to me, that's just it's just unbelievable. Socrates, I'm going to come to you last with this. You live in the state of Florida, and I think Florida's kind of a swing state. Am I wrong?
Very much so.
Okay. What are you seeing in the tea leaves?
Not good.
Okay.
And there's several things taking place. I see a gross inadequacy with the rule of law.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting to have a separation between the people who the law pertains to and the governing political class who's completely exempt. That's not going to stand. And it's not by a short measure here or there. It's gross. It's in scale. It's flagrant. The secondary element to this, and this parallels to it, is I see a lack of an acceptance of democratic will. We did not see a peaceful transfer of power through a democracy. We have the resistance that is active, it is functioning and engaged, and it is pervasive through our governing body. That is going to be something that I'm very concerned with, is we won't have an election. Yet instead of passively accepting and actively resisting it, I think it'll become kinetic before whoever comes in. I think there's very real danger there. I know the premise is that Trump gets elected, then his son, for that. I don't think it'll occur. I think what'll happen is we'll have someone duly elected, and the other political party and its followers will not accept it and will be very active about it. And that's when it becomes kinetic. And then you have a balkanization of the United States. And I see that as a very real threat. On the flip side of all that, I would say 3 months ago I was in Warsaw at the 21 convention there. And what a remarkable city and nation to have that in. You have a city that has been just at the brunt end of the 20th century in its worst form, in government slaughtering people wholesale, whether it's 300,000 Jews in one city of Warsaw, whether it is the Polish uprising of another 218,000, whether it was Hitler leveling the city after it was emptied, a complete urban area emptied during the war and then leveled. These people were able to reconstruct not only society under the guise of communism. Can you imagine that? Reconstructing a society under communism, surviving that. And what did they do? They focused in on the importance. And you talked to them, and that was some of the conversation I had when I spent my 10 days in Warsaw, talking to people there, particularly the elderly people that were there. And they sat down and said, we focused on what was important. And the one thing that was important was not politics. It wasn't just personal survival. It was family survival. And they talk about this. And so what you have is you have a complete disruption of the cultural, political, national landscape. They consolidate around the family, in this particular case also religion, the Catholic faith. And so that you had this national identity within that, and they maintained that for 40 plus years of stark communism. And trust me, it was very hard in Poland.
Right.
Survived that to the extent that they were the first Eastern nation to embrace capitalism, embrace their
Really? I didn't know.
Oh yeah, very much so. And then you look at, say, okay, you have this entire city that was reconstructed. You have all these Soviet bloc housings and buildings, and yet within 15 to 20 years in which you have capitalism coming over, you have these marvelous, gorgeous skyscrapers at the heart of this thing. And it is a remarkable contrast. So we have stellar examples of human perseverance in time within living memory. And if we become afraid, if we become frightened, we can look to nations like this as an exemplar. I know we look at the United States to say, hey, we're getting this right. That was the amazing thing about going to Poland, was we see a culture and nation who had done better under more adverse times. And we talk about, the greatest generation of history. It's embarrassing when you put that in comparison to what they went through. The first place we tried to visit when I was there was the Katyn Museum. And this was an extermination of the officer corps that the Russians had captured during their invasion of Poland. And what they ended up doing was they intentionally tried to commit genocide of the people that could actually run a nation. Military officers, governors, mayors, police officers, intellectuals, and so forth. So you did not have the intellectual capacity to form a unified nation, so that there wouldn't be this Polish Polish state. They persevered. They exist today, and it is an absolute celebration of human form and dignity. And so as much as I get frightened about the act of resistance, the war becoming kinetic, I can at least look to them and sit down and say, they've got it right. This is an exemplar. We can lean on that as an example.
Yeah, and they have far tougher circumstances than we do here in the U.S.
Tremendous.
Yeah,
It's really remarkable.
Yeah,
and
right.
interestingly enough, that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to this coming year is going back, not necessarily to Warsaw, I'll spend some time there, but Krakow. And I'm actually considering saying, hey, look, I'm going to probably go there early. If you guys want to tail in on me, I'm going to be seeing some stuff. All you have to do is keep up. Let's take a look at this as an example, because I would love to have that shared, not only within this group, but actually have that promoted out there, because I think we're going to desperately need it this coming year.
Very good. We've got just under 3 minutes left, and we're going to sort of lighten things up a little bit here. And I'd like to ask, individual members of the panel, what your favorite part of the 21 convention has been this time around. And Stefan, you're the newcomer. What's been your favorite part? What surprised you? What things did you think remain status quo? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's two things. One thing is the speakers, the level of the speakers here is huge. Jack Donovan and having Stefan Molyneux was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Both sources in my book, Hard Times Create Strong Men. I'm meeting my rock star heroes, so that's really cool. And then I think the quality of the attendees here is just phenomenal.
Yeah, top notch.
Lots of very bright men, accomplished men, guys who want to slay some pussy, all sorts of stuff. These are very, very bright guys, and that's really, I think, what makes this is having this group of men coming to consume this stuff and push it forward. It's amazing.
Excellent. Goldman.
Yeah. Again, it comes with the quality of the attendees. The thing I respect most in a man is somebody who's searching for truth. Might be his truth, but everybody I meet here, they're searching for their version of the truth. They come here. I think this is the best collection of truth seekers there is right now. And so it just makes me warm inside.
Goldman is the sensitive type, right? Steve, what's your favorite part about this year's
It is
convention?
in levels, at 3 levels. First level, I would say, is someone like President Johnson.
Presidente.
Yeah, Presidente Johnson, that cares about you guys so much that he's sacrificing his time and things to put together a situation in which we can come together as a community. That's number one. I mean, just the level of everything that's done from top to bottom and in between, just truly amazing experience. That's number one. Level 2 is the panel of guys. I mean, it is amazing how everybody, they're coming from different areas, like I say, different communities, but with the same mindset and thought process of helping you guide yourself out of the darkness and into the light. So it's the level of guys that come together, and on top of that, the attendees get to not only see men interact together, but also when they leave that stage, they're not being whisked away in in their little hat and their little goofy ass glasses and shit. You can come down and speak, shake hands, talk to them, and not feel that they're better than you. That you just feel like, you know what, this is family. But the most important thing is these motherfuckers out here listening to us right now. You
Absolutely.
motherfucking attendees, real quick, give your fucking selves a hand, please. You give yourselves a hand. Because without you guys, man, you are the future.
That's right.
We need all of you to be the best men, because we're not going to be here for long, but we need someone to carry on what what Anthony has created through us to you. So it's just in levels of 3s, but I love these guys. They just a group of awesome motherfuckers.
Excellent. Socrates, we have 1:09 left.
I'm sorry.
Your favorite? No, that's okay. Your favorite part.
My favorite part is seeing the shift of the manosphere.
Okay.
Going from primarily initially a pickup kind of organization where you're focusing on that to a shift to intersectional sexual dynamics to a shift to family-centric leadership and patriarchal leadership. I think that is incredibly important. I enjoy literally that this is kind of the center of the manosphere where you have multiple spheres coming together, and I'm really intrigued and fascinated by seeing that grow with new individuals coming in to speak and new ideas and new communities forming. And to sit down and say, to watch that evolution is absolutely remarkable.
That's incredible. It's incredible. Ken.
Yeah, it's just been amazing to see how the, to Steve's point, all these speakers that come in from different places, and we all created our speech by ourselves somewhere else, and they all come together, and it seems like it just flows seamlessly with different themes that are very consistent. And I think that's a really profound thing.
Excellent. Rich.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to see how diverse the panel is and how diverse the
Stole
instructors
mine, man.
So, I mean, it's really cool because we have no idea who needs what information.
Sure.
And even for me, sitting here listening to everyone speak and even listening to the questions that the people have,
Right.
I learn a lot about the dynamics of what are happening or what's going on in the culture just by listening and paying attention to what the questions are. And then by listening to your guys' talks, there's things that I'm growing and changing and new ideas that challenge my way of thought, and it's just cool to have such a diverse panel of people and such a diverse audience in attendance, and how we can all do this as adults and grown-ass men and not, get all emotional because someone says something that might not totally line up with our train of thought.
Absolutely. Tex.
I think the really cool thing this year is the addition of the workshops. And I know for you guys that have been at 21Con before, we have these workshops now. I mean, I had the opportunity, several of you guys were there as well. I mean, we had Jack Donovan leading a workshop on how to write a book and the nuances of publishing and all this kind of. I'm writing a book right now, right? I'm lost. And here I got a guy that's written a bunch of successful books, another guy who's written a bunch of successful books in the room giving advice as well, and we're all just coming together. Who would have thought I would have got that here this week? I was blown away.
Yeah, I agree with Tex and Rich. Every time I come to these events, I learn just as much as the attendees do. I learn from guys like Stefan, Steve, Ken, Tex, Rich. I love the, and I forgot the name of the book. Confidence Through Violence. I love that concept. I love how you can never understand exactly what Socrates is saying until you think about it a little bit later, right? You kind of have to. It's a riddle wrapped in a paradox and all that stuff. But I love learning from the guys, and I like the friendships that we make. I think that we can all consider ourselves friends, and just like Rich said earlier, I like that we can all come together in terms of diversity. We come from many different walks of life who are currently on many different walks of life, and I think there's tremendous value in that. And of course, the attendees are what makes this thing possible. So with that, we're going to draw the 84th edition of Red Man Group Live to a close. We thank you guys for tuning in. We thank you guys for watching. That's going to do it.